Hello and welcome, Suraj. It's such an honor to have you here, and I'm really excited to share you and your work and your wisdom with our audience. Suraj, you are a spiritual teacher. You are a master teacher of Kundalini Yoga. You also have been for many years guiding and counseling people both on spiritual matters and on personal and private matters. So a very well-rounded teacher with an incredible knowledge and wisdom that you can share with us. Maybe first of all, this was just a brief introduction. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you are doing.
Oh, thank you, Henrike. I've had a very varied life, actually. I grew up in New Zealand, and I'm part Maori, and
Wow.
I've got 3 children. I've got 3 children that are grown up now, and I've done a lot of different things in my life, but for the last 20 years, really, I've been traveling as an international teacher and mentor for people in different countries. And I've been really working mainly in China and Asia, Taiwan, Thailand, and into Israel, and also Australia and New Zealand. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And when we were having previous discussions, we were thinking about what we could share with our audience that's really different to what we have been discussing before with other teachers. And one thing that really struck me that I find very fascinating is that we touched upon the topic of healing ancestral trauma. So the kind of trauma that we experience through our own lineage as a woman, through my mother, my grandmother, my great-grandmothers, and all the stuff that happens historically that leads up to the point where we are now, and sometimes probably have certain feelings, certain emotional patterns, etc., that don't seem to really fit our current situation, but are affecting us really heavily. And you said that you are working with that in quite some significant ways. I would love to hear more about that.
Oh, thank you. I think this is really important for us as women, because often we just follow the patterns of our family, and we don't really understand that. We think this is all about us, but in fact, often it's been passed down from generation to generation, and it's cyclical in the family. And therefore, I feel if we're aware of it, we have this possibility now to heal. And when we heal ourselves from that ancestral trauma, we're also healing our mothers, grandmothers, all the way back 7 generations, and also, you know, our children, our children's children, the children yet to come. That's quite a hard concept to grasp sometimes, because we think, well, most of those, you know, people, our ancestors have passed, but in fact, it's as if we're all one. That whole lineage line is like all one, because we're interconnected so deeply. And with women, even more so than men, because we're interconnected through the womb. You know, and we've each been in our mothers, and we've absorbed really all our mother's patterns, her breath pattern, her mental patterns, her emotional patterns.
I have watched myself. I had this internal dialogue about exactly this. Oh my God, this is me being my mother yesterday for the last time. It's unbelievable. And one thing I read once that really fascinated me is to think about that we as egg cells were already present in our grandmother's body, because when our grandmother was forming the fetus of our mother in her womb, that fetus already had all the egg cells for her future children in her. So I've been a part of my grandmother's womb more than just of my mother. So it very much resonates, and it's a really like profound thought to see it in this bigger context. Now, I was wondering if you could share an example, I mean, without names obviously, but an example of how this has played out, maybe with a client, maybe with someone you have met, or a story you could share to make this a little bit more tangible for people who are listening.
Well, I think there's 2 things. First, there's a relationship with our own mother, because, you know, we have a very close relationship with our own mother, and especially if we're a girl child. And this relationship, we have to become separate, and we have to, you know, become an individual being. But somehow those links into our mother are so strong that we tend, when we're about 13 to 15 years old, we start to reject our mother, and we want to be different from her, and we see things in our mother we don't like, and we say, I'm not going to have that, I want to be myself. And this rejection's painful, actually, because we push our mother away. Very painful for the mother as well. And often whatever we don't like in our mother, we say, I'm going to be the opposite of that. So like if your mother's really strong, you say, I don't want to be so pushy, I'm going to be much more harmonious. Or if you see your mother as weak, then you say, I'm going to be strong. And whatever you do, whichever way, say you see your mother as weak and you think, I'm going to be strong, and you become very capable and achieve a lot and everything. Then, as you mentioned before, you get to be 40 years old, and one day you think, oh, I'm just like my mother. You do something
all the time.
And you think, oh, I'm really, really weak inside. Like you might be really strong outside, but inside you feel like you're not, because you've hidden that part of you so deeply. And it becomes, we get glimpses of this. And so there's so many patterns that come through. There's this, and then there's also, there's patterns in families. Maybe I do a lot of work with women where we look at our mothers and grandmothers and the patterns of birthing, and you find that often this repeats. So someone might, you suddenly find out that your mother had a baby, or your grandmother had a baby when she was 15 years old, and then you'll find that that same thing happens to your mother. Somehow she gets pregnant when she's very young, and then it happens to you. It's sort of like those sorts of things you don't really realize till you look back and you start to see all the connections back and back and back.
Yeah,
or if
totally.
There's been abuse in the family. Sometimes there's been physical, mental, emotional, spiritual abuse, and you'll find that it goes down through generations.
Yeah, and then especially the behavioral patterns that bubble up and how we are dealing with things, either out loud or just in our mind. And funnily enough, when I think about this, I mean, I have a boy child, my son is 16, but I can often see how he is very much like my mother in certain regards, where I go like, no, I want to be different. And then it skips me, but it comes out. Like, for example, if somebody was, very nurturing and caring, but a little bit smothering, that's not my mom. But if that was the case, somebody reacts and absolutely not wanting to be this, therefore the child not getting a lot of it, but wanting it, and then being that in return again. So I think sometimes these things zigzag almost through the lineage as well, right?
Yes, they zigzag. And in fact, the person who's not showing that the mother showed, that's normally within her, but it's part of her shadow. She's hidden it so deeply. So the child then comes up with that because they can feel it in their mum, even though it's unexpressed.
And
because
that's a whole another talk we need to have one day. I would love to speak to you in more depth about shadow work. That is such a fascinating field. Now, if our listeners were to resonate with this and they are finding it's like, yes, there's definitely some ancestral stuff coming through our lineage, be it abuse, be it certain relationship issues, be it certain ways of dealing or not dealing with problems of substance abuse, or often subtle stuff. Like I know in our family, it's subtle things, like things that you find difficult, things how men and women relate, etc. Now, if that was our audience, what kind of recommendations do you have, what people can do to take the first few steps of becoming more aware and then actually being able to deal with it and process it so it doesn't get handed down to the next generation?
Yes, I feel that probably the first step is to heal the relationship with your mother. A lot of us have things in the relationship that's not clear, and we haven't really fully accepted ourselves. We're still wanting our mother's approval or something else from her love, whatever we felt we didn't get. So that's the first step, I think, is to accept, if you can see the pattern, accept the pattern. That's a big step, just to see it, because sometimes they're quite confronting. So you see it, just sit with it, and then start to think about your relationship with your mother and start to feel what's really going on for you with your mother, so that you can be with the feelings that come up around your mother. Sometimes we feel so guilty if we have negative feelings about our mother, but they're not really about our mother. They're really about us, because the mother is the projection. So it's really, if you feel that your mother didn't love you enough, it's probably that you can't love yourself enough. These sorts of things. And you start to, so it's not to heal your mother, it's to do the healing always within yourself.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a good point, because what I was going to say is, how would you recommend people who are dealing with really toxic, difficult relationships? Not everybody has that privilege of having a mother that, yes, we're having our issues with, but we love them very much. And we know deep down, even if there's little issues, that they, of course, love us. But some people have really traumatic, difficult relationship with mother, or mother isn't even there anymore and they can't fix it anymore. So really, you are saying, bring it back to yourself and hold the thought and observe the thinking patterns and what is coming up, but then look at solving that within yourself rather than needing the other person to play the part. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, and I think this word fix is sort of a difficult word, because there's really nothing to fix. You know, we're always trying to fix things or change things or manipulate things. And so I think just start, like if you've got a really toxic relationship with your mother, just start by being there with that, rather than, you know, start where you are and accept that there's nothing wrong with that. It's there for both of you to learn, and sometimes we can't be with our mother a lot, you know, if it's been really difficult and it creates too much pain in us. But it's to start to see your mother as separate from you, so that to let her go, almost to let her be free, to give her back to herself, because we've still got demands on our mother. You know, why doesn't she love me more? Why doesn't she do this for me? Why? If we can drop those whys and just be with it as it is, I think that's always a good place to start. It doesn't mean you're trying to create a really harmonious relationship with your mother. It just means that you can accept her, you know, because we don't really know what our mothers have been through. Some of them have been through really tough times. And our generation, we've never been through a war, or, you know, most of us haven't. But our mothers, probably all of them, have touched something like that. And they have their own trauma. So it's almost like just opening your heart to your mum, you know, that it doesn't mean, and you do that inside. It doesn't mean that you have to heal anything. It's just to become able to let her be.
Yeah, be who she is. I find I've softened a lot in my own way of looking at my mother, my parents, really, in being a parent myself and seeing myself making such an effort and trying and falling short. And I think that's most of us as parents. You say you have 3 kids, right? That we are seeing our own shortcomings, and we wish we were better, and we wish we could always be patient, and we wish we could always be kind. And then we catch ourselves, maybe, like, I don't know about you, but yelling at my 16-year-old and stuff. And I'm pretty good, I think. Like, he says to me the other day, "Mom, I think I'm the only kid in my grade who actually likes their parent." I'm like, "Thank you, kid." That was really sweet. But at the same time, I see all my shortcomings, and I'm sometimes wondering, it's like, I just hope you're never going to judge me as harshly as I sometimes have judged my own parents. And like the reflection of that to the next generation, I think that's a part of softening into the experience of, yes, they really did the best they could with what they had, just like I'm trying to do the best I can with what I have. And it's not always that pretty.
It's not always pretty, and it's not always easy, is it? And it's like, I think once you have your own child, it softens a little bit, because you realize the love that a mother has for a child, and you start to really know that no matter what your mother shows you or how she handles you, she does have that love somewhere in her. She might not be able to express it, but it's natural for a mother to have that love, even if it's very, very hidden, very dampened down. You know, she might never have been able to express it, but there is a mother's love that is really unconditional. And when you become a parent, you know, and you start to want certain things from your child, you want them to be a certain way, then you realize that the amount of pressure we put on our children, and just to sort of loosen your grip a little bit and let them breathe and let them grow into themselves rather than what we want them to be.
Absolutely. And it's the same thing, I think, about taking it back to us. Like you're saying, take it back to you when you're working on your mother. Same thing, but take it back to you, because if you're putting pressure on your kid, I think a lot of the time it's actually about us and our own perfectionism and how we think we should be and they should perform as an extension of us, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So again, if somebody sees like, yes, this is what it is, and I'm starting to become willing, that's step 1, to look at it and be willing to just be with it, to not run away, because that's often for many of us, for my clients as well as yours, for us ourselves probably as well on occasions, it's like, I want to avoid it, I want to run away from it, I don't want to have to deal with it because it makes me emotionally so uncomfortable. So step one is to really be willing to look at it, make the time, sit with it, be present, and allow it to be, without judging it, without labeling it, without making it right or wrong. What's the next step once we're willing and able to do that?
I think the next step is actually to go towards it a little. But not so much go towards your mother, but go towards that part of yourself that's reacting to it, you know, internally. Because so often whenever things get difficult, we divert, and it sort of goes underneath. And the more it goes underneath, the more fear we have about touching it, because we're afraid to feel. I think especially in the world we live in today, there's so much pressure and stress that people are feeling. It's almost like we numb ourselves down, and we're a little afraid to feel. So we might say, oh, everything's okay with my mum, everything's okay with this, everything's okay with this. But inside there's a turmoil going on, there's an inner conflict going on, and that's what really makes us suffer, you know. So to start to go towards some of your feelings, to start to feel what you're feeling instead of listening to the stories around it. It's like if you feel anger, you know, a lot of us want to dampen it down because we're afraid of our emotions, because they can be overwhelming. If they just come out, you know, they can hurt others. But if we can feel the sensation of the anger, instead of going, I'm angry because he did this to me, or this, you know, outside, just feel the sensation of it and actually stay with the sensation of it, then you'll find it's an energy that can shift into other things. It's not permanent. These feelings are just moving through. So
and often, I don't know if that's the same approach that you have, but I know that in my coaching practice, anger is actually can be really productive once you start to fight it and push it down, or blame and get rid of it, and once you can actually transform that into a very passionate, something needs to change kind of energy.
Yeah, it's sort of a creative energy.
Absolutely, it's a creative energy. You just have to come out of that negative frame and not act against something, but add in favor of the thing that you actually needed that you didn't get, right? Like even if it's about defending yourself when you weren't able to speak, that might be something that people might be experiencing in the now, because they might have learned from several generations back, mothers that wouldn't speak, that would put up with things that didn't have boundaries. So the anger wells up. I've just seen that recently with a client. The anger wells up, but they are not speaking. They're repeating the same pattern, to go like, that's a sign. The anger is actually a really useful street sign that goes, stop, hey, hang on, you're off track here, this is not right. And then to actually speak it, even just acknowledge it for yourself, whether or not that's with a partner or other people, and just go, right, this is a boundary violation, and I need to put a firm boundary, whether other people like it or not, whether it feels comfortable or not, but that's my way out and beyond the issue. So to listen to those feelings. And are you recommending to people to basically become the observer, like it's the case with many meditation techniques, or is it really about like be in it without observing it, just be and feel it in your body?
I think that they're both really viable, but at the moment for me, I'm working more with people really feeling it, because I find that many people are sort of way out here sometimes. They're not really anchored in their body, and to feel it is really important.
Yeah, and that's especially with the media, right? With media, with screens, with everything. We are very much cerebral in our head, and we're disconnected from our heart. Yeah, totally.
So our mind is going really fast, but I think with our thoughts, it's really helpful to be a witness to our thoughts, because, you know, we have all these stories about ourselves and about other people, you know, just even about ourselves, that I'm not good at that, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not smart enough, all these internal stories. And to be able to see some of those and just realize how they invalidate you over and over, you know, that's the witnessing part, to start to come out of the mental stories and more down to feel things in your body. And, you know, it can be painful, because often the feelings around your heart, and I think, you know, you feel your heart you might be having a heart attack or something, because, you know, you feel this movement around your heart. But actually, if you can just be with that, it's really beautiful, because it breaks open into something beyond the fear or whatever it is you're feeling. There's sort of love behind it. There's the spaciousness behind it. And if you can stay with it, somehow that opens, because the feeling's not solid.
And that is a really interesting insight. So you're saying sit with it, really feel it, and almost like feel through it, right? One thing that I've seen on a few occasions is that people, though, doing this kind of work but not really knowing what they are doing and how to process, is that they are coming in over and over and over again, coming back to the feeling, coming back to the feeling, staying with it without finding their way out of it. So how do you process if something gets re-triggered over and over again? How do you then go to the next place from sitting within the feeling and really allowing it to be?
There's things you can do with the feeling so that you realize the insubstantiality of it. But I have found that if you really go into the feeling, deeply into the center of it, it will shift. It will shift. Now, sometimes it might come back, because it'll come back in a different form. But, you know, it's a bit like, you know, sometimes you can be really, really joyful. It's like, say you first fall in love, it's like this sort of euphoria. And then the next minute you're worried that it's going to collapse, or that, you know, it's going to fall apart.
Yeah.
So we always have these things like the joy and then the pain that we might lose something, the joy that we're happy, there's the pain that we might be sad in the next moment. It's almost like they're one, you know, that you can be very joyful and you might be crying because it's very sensitive and your heart's open. So it's this with all your feelings. So even if something's extremely painful, if you feel it, there is something behind it. And it takes, what happens is when you really go into the feeling, is that sometimes you feel like you're going to die, you know, because it's almost overwhelming. If it's a deep feeling, you feel like, yes, your world's going to collapse or something. So sometimes you need someone with you to sit with you to actually experience that and feel safe, you know.
Absolutely. And I've found that this being witnessed is a really special thing, especially among women. Again, I think actually it's really important for men as well. And I see it in my kind of periphery. I see it emerging more and more that men are forming men's groups as well, to be able to sit with each other, listen actually from their heart to each other. And, you know, not just over a beer or two go like, oh, mate, you know, no worries. But actually really listen to each other and witness each other's challenges and support each other. But as women, I found that particularly during Corona, we had a very tight-knit women's circle among friends via Zoom at the time, because we couldn't get together in person during the lockdown. And it was really powerful. It's not even about finding solutions. It's not about saying the right thing, just about being able to, in front of witnesses and particularly other women, speak our truth and share what was truly going on and being held in that. That's something particularly feminine, isn't it?
It's so powerful. I think for women, it's really important that we can talk and share. It's very, very healing for us. And we're working through the collective when we do that. So when we do that and heal for ourselves, we're also healing for all the women. You know, we're so interconnected. And you find that most trauma, you know, the trauma is a trauma, but normally we can move through the trauma unless we haven't shared it. Most people that really suffer from long-term trauma, something's happened and they've never been able to tell anybody about it. And that's what causes the long-term trauma. So to be able to share your story, it's very important.
Yeah, and the whole concept of holding space, this is something I think when we're talking about what can people take away from this conversation, there's already so much. But one more thing is to develop our internal sense of being able to hold space. And that's for ourselves, that's for each other, and also allowing being held by others and encouraging that, even being willing to be vulnerable with others, right? Brené Brown's work, I love in that regard. I don't know if you've read her books.
Yes,
like I'm a big fan of Brené Brown and her work on vulnerability.
Yeah.
So that's something that's really quite powerful. And then what kind of transformations do you see when people do this transformational work and do process ancestral traumas? How do you know that you're actually through it. Because if stuff gets re-triggered on occasions, I know that in my life there's a few things that I thought I had dealt with 5 or 10 years ago, and then on occasions they resurface, and I'm like, I can't believe I'm here again. How do I know that I've actually processed the whole thing and it's done?
I think it's more like, don't try and process everything. You know, it's like, again, it's that thing of trying to make myself okay, but you are okay anyway. You've always been okay. It's like you've just forgotten that. And so I think sometimes it's not self-improvement to me. It's more like finding what's true to myself, and accepting and loving myself in a way that I can then share that with others, because we're not putting anything on top anymore. We're actually deepening into ourselves. So it's a sort of it's finding that still point within yourself, even though there's a tornado. It's like being in the center of the storm, you know. So if you can hold that, it doesn't mean that you're perfect, but sort of know what your triggers are. If you know what your triggers are, at least you can, you're aware, you know, you can witness and then change your behavior a little bit. But it's almost like not trying to get to the bottom of the barrel, because it might be endless, and just being happy that life lightens up, because I think it sort of lightens up. You know, I have these 3 daughters. I'll sort of give this an example. I don't think they'll mind. And I went on a pilgrimage to India, and it was a special pilgrimage to work with ancestral trauma. And I had to do this process for, 24 hours without sleep sort of thing. And it was very difficult, actually. And if I hadn't been thinking that I was doing this for my daughters, I probably wouldn't have been able to complete it. And when I finished it, I didn't really know if it had any effect. And it was sort of over the next year I saw it. They all went through really big shifts. So it was like, because I can see the patterns in the family, and my daughters are all different, very different, but the pattern, there's a sort of a pattern there. But, one of them went overseas to Paris on her own to live in an apartment when she was 21, and she's sort of been holding on to not going. And they all had these, they had these big changes that year. And I feel that it had something to do with that something freed up in them. They could go towards their life. They could step more into their life.
Yeah, amazing. That sounds fascinating. I shall ponder this in my own case as well. I sent my son overseas for 6 months last year as well, and it was really good, like allowing him to become a man and be out there by himself and a little bit detached from mom, because I think this is also really important for us as mothers, that we are allowing our kids to go and to fly out of the nest, and don't hold them back, because we need them probably more at some stages than they need us. But that might be
such
another
a good point, actually.
It might be a different point for a different conversation. But hey, thank you so much. Like, I know that I'm deeply fascinated with your work, with what you have just shared, and I trust that there's a bunch of people out there who say, man, I really want to hear more from that lady. Suraj, where can people find out about you, about the potential events you might be running again when COVID is over, about possibilities to work with you one-on-one if you are doing this? Or I know that you're writing a book as well at the moment, right?
I am, yes. I have a website. Would that be helpful? It's
absolutely. I'll share it in the comments, but maybe tell us a little bit more about where people can find out and which ways people can access your work.
Through my website, it's just Suraj, Suraj-Arya, suraj@suraj-arya.com.au. I work on retreat a lot. I do short retreats and longer retreats, sometimes just for women. I've just done a 3-day meditation retreat, just going inside and working with nature, because I think women are really, we have such a strong connection with nature that often we forget that we are part of nature. And I also do counseling and mentoring, and so my website is there. And I wondered if I could share a very short process, a little meditative process for trauma. Because this little process you can do with children. Yes, you can do this with any sort of trauma, and also with really young children. So it uses a mantra, which is Sata Nama. This is part of the Kundalini Yoga tradition. So Satanama is just the cycle of life, you know, infinity, birth, rebirth. That's that cycle. So you use your index finger. I use my left hand because I'm left-handed. So it's Sa on the base of the lip, the bottom lip, Ta on the nose, Na on the temple, Ma on the third eye. And then you do it again the other way. Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. Sa, Ta, Na, Ma. So you can just do this for like 3 minutes, just a short time, but every day for, you know, maybe 40 days. And it's powerful. Yeah, it's like it resets something, and you do it with your eyes shut or nearly shut, and just use this mantra out loud if you can.
Nice. And do you hold a specific intention with that, or a specific focus, or does it not matter?
Often you do it with children or teenagers, so it's actually to heal their trauma, but they may not be, you know, they may not want to acknowledge their trauma. So you can hold that intention for them to hold their trauma.
Okay.
Yeah, to hold their healing. You just hold, you know, that it's almost like you're setting yourself into the natural flow of life and nature. And this, you know, it's for men or women, boys or girls, but I think it's we heal anyway, you know, it's nature that we heal, but we fight our healing a lot. So
we do. We want it so badly. We're running it away from it so successfully. Yeah, and that's all of us. People sometimes go, "Well, yeah, coach, you've got it figured out." I'm like, yeah, very far from it. But we're on the path, and I guess that we're willing to work on it. We're willing to look at it most days, and we're willing to keep trying. Like fall on our nose, get back up, trying again, and becoming the observer rather than, you know, staying caught up thinking that all of this is real and all the drama is real. Anyway, it's been such a pleasure talking to you, Suraj. I think I will definitely call you up again and ask you for more conversations. I really love what you had to say, and I trust a lot of people will find value in hearing this. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you for inviting me, Henrike. Yeah. I've really enjoyed being with you.
Big pleasure. And I will leave the details, if you are watching, I will leave the details to Suraj's website, bit more information as well in the comment section. So if you are interested, please have a look there. And if you like, as a visitor of this video and of this page, what we are sharing, please follow our channel down there below, and like, comment, and share what you have seen here. And we're looking forward to seeing you again on another occasion, on another video. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Goodbye. Bye-bye.